Madam Speaker, I tabled this motion in November last year after more than a year of observing bullying, harassment and intimidation in this chamber. I brought this motion because Territorians have a right to expect their elected representatives to uphold the highest standards of behaviour. They expect us to debate strongly. They expect us to disagree. They expect us to scrutinise legislation. They expect us to argue passionately for our communities. This is what a healthy democracy looks like. But bullying, harassment and intimidation are not debate, and they are not a standard that would pass in any other workplace. Territorians do expect strong debate in this chamber, but they also expect the same standards of behaviour here that they would expect in any other workplace in the Northern Territory. So the question before this Assembly is a very simple one. Should the Northern Territory Parliament be held to the same workplace standards that apply everywhere else? I don't believe that there's a single member of this Assembly who would stand up and say that bullying, harassment, intimidation should be tolerated in any workplace, so it shouldn't be controversial to say that it should not be tolerated in this one. Supporting this motion is about ensuring that this Parliament reflects the standards Territorians expect everywhere else: respect, accountability and professionalism. Madam Speaker, bullying and harassment are not unique to the Northern Territory Parliament. Across Australia, there are many repeated and high-profile incidents of misconduct, and many of them have led to major independent reviews. At the Commonwealth level, the Foster Review and the landmark Jenkins set the standard review, examined serious incidents and workplace culture in parliamentary workplaces. In New South Wales, the Broderick Review investigated bullying, sexual harassment and misconduct in Parliament. South Australia commissioned the Strickland Review, followed by the PASC Review examining implementation of reforms, and in Tasmania, the Bolt Review looked closely at culture within ministerial and parliamentary workplaces. While each of these reviews examined different circumstances, their findings were strikingly similar. They found that existing frameworks governing the conduct of members of parliament were inadequate. They'd failed to protect parliamentary staff, including electorate staff, advisors and non-partisan staff, as well as members themselves, from bullying, from harassment and sexual harassment. And as a result, jurisdictions across Australia have begun introducing stronger standards, including clearer codes of conduct and behaviour frameworks for members of parliament. These reviews make an important point that codes alone are not a silver bullet, because some parliaments already did have codes in place, yet harmful behaviour persisted. But what these reviews do tell us is that clear standards are necessary and culture and leadership matter just as much. Bullying and intimidation are not new in any parliament, including this parliament, but it doesn't have to be like this. And for those outside the chamber who are listening, here are some examples of the kind of behaviour I'm talking about. Members being shouted down while speaking, people being screamed at across the chamber, people being called gutter trash, mocking laughter across the chamber, taunting, no one cares about you, the Chief Minister saying to me, just straight in the gutter, your happy place on the other side, and at a different time the Chief Minister saying about the Leader of the Opposition, she wins the award for being the biggest gutter trash politician in the chamber. And of course, as many have seen, the recording that circulated, the Chief Minister saying to the former member of Nightcliff, who sadly is no longer here in the chamber, "It must be time for the bottom of the barrel from the Queen of the bottom of the barrel herself. The gutter trash on the other side has still not been taken out with the rubbish from Cyclone Fina." The Deputy Chief Minister misrepresenting what I said and then screaming at me across the chamber in a manner that was aggressive and intimidating, completely inconsistent with the standards of behaviour expected in any workplace. The same Deputy Chief Minister taunting the Leader of the Opposition with "you're a loser" over and over again while she talked about her family history of the stolen generation. Let me say that again. While a member of this chamber is talking about one of the most harmful and shameful episodes in our history and how it impacted on her and her own family, the Deputy Leader of our government is calling across the chamber, "you're a loser." These examples stand among a litany of personal comments directed at individuals and at their families rather than at their arguments, and the kind of name-calling would not be acceptable in a schoolyard, let alone in any other workplace. None of these comments strengthen debate. They lower the standard of it. They don't improve legislation. They don't serve the people we represent. Name-calling doesn't make communities safer, it doesn't fix hospitals, it doesn't help families struggle with the rising cost of living. But more than that though, this behaviour is a strategy. It creates distractions, often tactical ones, used to disrupt important debate, to obfuscate, to avoid questions, and to belittle anyone who disagrees, questions decisions, or seeks to broaden debate and contribute to good decision-making in the Northern Territory. This behaviour wastes valuable parliamentary time and it diverts attention away from the serious issues that Territorians expect us to deal with, eroding public trust in the process, and I can't tell you how many times people raise this with me. Put simply, bullying and harassment and intimidation disrupt and undermine our democracy. Parliamentary debate is supposed to be a process of strengthening policies where members listen to each other, where members work together to make the best possible law for the people that we represent. Anytime we offer Territorians less than that, we're failing to do our jobs and we're failing our communities. People watching Question Time should hear explanations about policy and decisions from leaders who understand and take seriously their accountability to the public. Instead, too often, they see questions met with personal attacks, sarcasm, or attempts to belittle the person asking the question, prioritising momentary political points over giving Territorians understanding, input, and ultimately control over the decisions that affect their lives. Madam Speaker, Territorians want answers, not insults. We all love it in this chamber when school groups come through this parliament. Children sit in the gallery and observe how their elected representatives behave. And more than once, these young people have asked me, why are they shouting at each other? We're not allowed to do that at school. And Madam Speaker, I agree. This chamber should model the best of how people in a democracy work together. It should show that people can disagree strongly, argue robustly, and still treat each other with respect. Because if we can't demonstrate respectful disagreement here in the Parliament of the Northern Territory, then we can't expect it in the wider community. And if children can understand the difference between disagreement and disrespect, then surely members of Parliament can understand that too. Madam Speaker, Parliament is not just a debating chamber, it's also a workplace. Every day, dozens of people come here to do their jobs. Staff of the department, advisors, accountants, parliamentary and secretariat staff, security staff, cleaners and many others who keep this institution running and enable all of us to do our jobs. They're not politicians. They can't answer back. They deserve to work in a professional environment where they feel safe and respected. We've heard, and we've heard about it yesterday and today in this chamber, allegations of bullying by the member for Fong Lim towards Department of the Legislative Assembly staff, and this is a serious matter, yet as has been raised, the government has failed to openly explain how these incidents have been dealt with. Yesterday, the CLP government refused to use the mechanism that we currently have as a parliament to investigate these matters by voting against referring the member for Fong Lim to the Privileges Committee. That decision, the refusal to use the current tools we have to try and make sure that this is a safe workplace, makes it abundantly clear that we need better and more robust processes. In the words of yourself, the Speaker, in the chamber just a few minutes ago, the staff in this building deserve to know that this Assembly will not look away. Madam Speaker, this is our opportunity to show them exactly that. At a recent International Women's Day event, Josie Hullett from the Anti-Discrimination Commission spoke about how organisations can move from a reactive to proactive approach by focusing on three things. First, leadership, intentional, courageous leadership that models respectful behaviour, inclusion and equality. Secondly, reviewing the policies, reporting pathways and decision-making processes to ensure that they're inclusive, that they're accessible to everyone and that everyone can trust them. And third, examining power structures, asking who holds authority, who is at the table and whether people feel safe to speak up. Hullick highlighted that prevention starts with courageous, proactive leadership to create workplaces and institutions free from discrimination, harassment and victimisation. And these principles reflect what the law now requires in many workplaces across Australia. Territorians have a right to expect the same standards here that exist in other workplaces, and other parliaments are already moving in this direction. The Tasmanian Parliament has recently introduced a strengthened code that emphasises leadership, accountability and independent oversight, exactly the same kind of framework that we could implement here. Madam Speaker, when Parliament becomes a place of hostility rather than healthy debate, the quality of our work suffers. Serious issues are pushed aside, scrutiny is sidelined, and when we do our jobs poorly, that shows great disrespect to everyone in the Territory. Territorians didn't elect us to this chamber to shout at each other. They elected us to deal with the issues that matter: safer communities, functioning hospitals, the cost of living, and bullying, as I said, does not solve these problems. Doing our jobs professionally does. Madam Speaker, this motion is practical and clear. It asks us to review our current code of conduct, which is silent on issues of bullying, on issues of harassment and intimidating behaviour, and develop a clear behaviour code for members of the Northern Territory Parliament, a code that is robust, a code that is workable, a code with clear behavioural standards, independent oversight, confidential complaint handling, and a code with consequences, something that I know the CLP government loves. Proportionate sanctions, where standards in place when standards are breached. These are basic workplace protections that exist in many other workplaces across Australia, including other parliaments. They're consistent with best practice across parliaments, in parliaments across the Commonwealth, and with what Territorians expect. Madam Speaker, standards matter. The culture of a parliament shapes the quality of its work. Strong debate absolutely is essential and central to this parliament. But none of that requires bullying, harassment or intimidation, and personal attacks are what politicians reach for when they cannot defend their policies. Territorians expect better, and it's time that we rise to meet their expectations. This motion asks a very simple question of every member in this chamber. Do you believe bullying, harassment and intimidation has a place in this parliament? If the answer is no, then supporting a behaviour code with clear standards and accountability should not be controversial. Territorians deserve a parliament that reflects the best of our community, respectful, accountable and focused on the job that we were elected to do. And Territorians expect better from this parliament, and they have every right to. Madam Speaker, I commend the motion to the Assembly.